Justin, welcome to the Big Lab podcast. How are we doing?
Good. How you doing, George? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm not too bad, mate. We're going across the pond again, international with the podcast. So thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah,
Would you
of
like to give
course.
yourself a quick introduction of who you are and what you're about?
Yeah, sure. My name's Justin Krompier. I'm a landscape and lifestyle photographer from the United States. I'm from New Jersey, and I spent the last 4 years living in a camper van, traveling the United States.
It's pretty cool. Like, I first came across you on my Explore feed, and I was like, I've got to hear this guy's story. So,
Well, I appreciate it.
I,
I'm glad that we found each other, dude. Seriously, thank you so
yeah,
much. I'm very honored to be able to share my story.
no problem at all. Should we get right into it?
Yeah, let's let's do it.
Let's go. So on your Instagram, you've got a bit of a quote that says "one day at a time." What does
Mhm.
that mean to you today?
Um, so one day at a time is very much a recovery sort of mantra, I guess you would call it, right? Because so I guess a little beyond just the general introduction, I'm in recovery from active addiction. I was addicted to opiates and heroin for years. It destroyed my life. And one day at a time is like a slogan, really, that you hear repeated all the time when when you get into recovery, and usually a 12-step fellowship, but really any kind of recovery. That's just my experiences in 12-step recovery. And yeah, I mean, it is so literal. When you first get clean, you are really just taking it one day at a time, usually 1 hour at a time, and most of the time actually 1 minute or second at a time, uh, because being not on substances as an addict is actually quite unnatural. It is an unnatural state to be in. So taking it one day at a time is just a way to kind of like slow it down and not, make it this grand the rest of my life kind of thing, right? Because when you enter recovery, it's daunting. It's like I can't drink. I can't have a toast at my wedding. I can't ever do this or do that, or socially or with the boys or at a ball game or on top of a mountain. Like, I can't do any substances. I can't drink. I can't smoke. Smoking's now legal like everywhere. Like, I don't know what it's like over there, but here it's legal pretty much everywhere, especially in California. You can't actually walk anywhere without smelling marijuana smoke. So, really, it's just a way to slow everything down and really just take it one day at a time. And that doesn't change. So you ask me, like, what does it mean for me today? It is literally the exact same thing as it was when I first got clean day one. That doesn't change. Recovery is very much a uh, one day at a time process. And, sometimes my best day, is just the best thing that happened on any particular day, and a particularly bad day, is just that I didn't use, that I get to go to sleep clean again, which is a huge blessing, because for a long time that wasn't even remotely possible. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because actually only a few months ago, it used to say these pretzels are making me thirsty, which is a Seinfeld reference. I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. So for years it actually said these pretzels are making me thirsty. And I actually recently changed it because I I feel at this point in my life, it is important to be sort of like to use my platform as a beacon, and so when people see my profile, if that's the first thing they see, if you're in recovery, you know exactly what that means. And if nothing else, it's a really nice mantra, and it also says a lot about who I am,
Yeah,
which I'd love for my page to be, and my work in my life to be, about more than, photographs.
yeah. I guess it shows people who are obviously further back in the process that it is possible as well. Like you say, you're using your platform not just for your photography, but also to show others that may be going through addiction or trying to become sober and clean, that it is possible as well. Because you show quite a lot of that journey through your post, which is, I think, the first post I saw of yours was uh, just after you'd gone, I think, 10 years sober, was the one
Mhm.
that I came across.
Okay.
And yeah, like you say, one day at a time. I think that can be transferred into a lot of things as well. I do online coaching outside of my day job as well. And some of the things that I say to my clients are like just one more day because they
Mhm.
might be struggling in terms of sticking to the plan and things like that. But if you can keep adding just one more day, then those one more days add up, don't they, over time?
Oh, 100%. It's like putting a small deposit in the bank every day.
Yeah.
You're putting $1 in every day, and then one day you get to make a big withdrawal. Which is pretty cool. And then a lot of times it's just like looking back at your life. In my case, it's just like looking back and thinking like I cannot believe where I am compared to where I was.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I guess let's take it all the way back then, sort of how you grew up and where the substances first entered your life.
So I grew up in New Jersey. And I had a really good childhood, um, from what I can remember. And substances were, I was definitely a rambunctious kid. I was like always getting in trouble. Uh, Class clown a little bit. Hard. I had a hard time paying attention. Excelled in like sports. And anything physical activity kind of thing. I played all the sports and excelled at all of them. But school, I struggled not because I was, dumb or slow witted or anything like that. Quite the opposite. I was just bored. When you're a young boy, like you just want to play. You just want to run around. You want to be outside on the playground or kicking a soccer ball or throwing a football or something like that. And you know, long story short, I was getting in so much trouble because I wasn't able to pay attention in school, and I was tested, and diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And at the time, the way they treated that was with narcotic stimulants. Um, was Adderall, and other sort of uppers like that, that would kind of get me to focus, and kind of quell my hyperactivity. And it worked, but it definitely made me very socially awkward. I remember like when it would wear off at the end of the day, or I'd be on my way back from school on the bus home. I don't know what it was. Like I would experience at a young age, like a depression, like I don't know what it was, but I remember like a daily depression. And I don't know if that was the substance itself or what, but I also remember very clearly on the days that I would forget to take them, withdrawing. At a young age, I was
Yeah.
exposed to being on, um, uh, what is the name? It's something. It's not meth, obviously. What is the technical term for like Adderall? It's eluding me. I can't believe this. I was on it for like 15 years of my life. Whatever. I remember when I would forget to take it, I would go into a withdrawal and I would be sick all day. All day I was just sick in school, in middle school, as a middle schooler, as a high schooler. Um and so I learned early on that pills make you feel good, and when you forget to take them, it makes you feel bad.
Yeah.
And I experimented. I was very much an experimenter, down to try anything. Uh Thought I was mentally very strong. I would never get addicted to anything. I remember thinking like, how do people get addicted to drugs? Like, just don't get addicted. Like, just like, are you what you must be missing something if you can't just not take it. If you start to feel yourself get addicted, just stop. I was humbled really quickly, you know. And so I experimented a lot, throughout high school and throughout college with various substances, and opiates always just did something for me, you know? I don't know how quite to describe it, but it opiates, like, filled a hole in my spirit. You know, it was like the answer to any social awkwardness, which, like I said, when I was put on Adderall and stimulants, I feel like I became very hypercritical of myself. You know, I'd be like in my head and I'd be like, everybody's looking at me, everybody's judging me, everybody's like laughing at me, nobody likes me. And I never experienced that ever in my life. I was always very confident. I had lots of friends. And somewhere along the line, I became very self-conscious, you know? And I don't know if it was the drugs or if it was just, you know, the awkwardness of puberty and that time in your life, but um, opiates fixed that. And
Right.
drinking fixed that, you know? The first time I got, like, really properly drunk and had a good proper drunk, I was at a Sweet 16 party, and it was the whole thing was just like, "Oh, there's cute girls, and I feel better, I feel like I could be myself." It was for, like, the first time ever I felt like, "Oh, I could just be myself." You know, I can just there's no self-consciousness, and I'm having fun and everybody's partying, there's music, and it was intoxicating, like, beyond the actual physical intoxication, it was like and I remember I got back to school, like, the next Monday, and this is how I know that I had a problem, I could see it now when I was young. I got back to school, we're sitting at the lunch table, and we're all talking about the weekend, and I'm like, "So what are we doing this Friday, guys?" And everyone was like, I don't know, it's Monday. Like, I have no idea what we're doing, you know? But I was already mentally obsessed. The mental obsession, you know, which is a major component of addiction and alcoholism, which I'll say addiction because to me it's the same thing, you know? It's the exact same disease. It doesn't matter what the substance is. But I was already obsessed, right? And so those little clues came in early, and by the time I got to college and I had experienced heartbreak and all kinds of stuff, family life troubles, and, you know, the weight of the world started getting a lot heavier in my life, that when I refound, right, because I took a break and I was just, you know, my freshman year and most of my sophomore year, I was just partying normal, you know, drinking, maybe some other stuff, right? When I found um, opiates in the form of oxys, little blue oxy 30s, we called them blues. Um, when I rediscovered opiates in college, all my problems went away, and that became my everything. That became my God, my higher power, my best friend, my girlfriend, my everything. And it felt like the biggest, warmest hug I ever felt in my life, where I just felt once again, like when I was younger at that Sweet 16, I felt like I could be myself. I felt confident. All my worries just went out the window. And I had found the thing that I had been looking for since I started feeling that social awkwardness in middle school and high school, you know, and I ran with that for, you know, the next 5 years, really.
Would you say it was almost like the perfect storm then, the ADHD, the alcohol, and the substances
I
almost?
think, I think so, but I don't think it's like by chance. There's a lot of people in recovery that I hear stories of because, I go to 12-step fellowships and yeah, I'm in a 12-step fellowship. I go to meetings. I've heard thousands of stories from other addicts. And when I first got clean, I heard a lot in meetings about, I just always felt different, but I was born with this. I don't know that I believe that personally, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or any of that stuff. I'm just an addict. I'm just a regular guy that suffered with addiction, and now I'm clean and I live a beautiful life, and I have some tools in my life that have helped me get and stay clean. But I don't believe that. I think stuff happens that either the way that you learn how to cope, I think something happens in a person's life, and then their ability to cope with that is off. Is in my case, I don't think I really learned. There was no blueprint, like for what I had experienced when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and um, when when for me, it was a lot of family troubles, right? And when that stuff started happening, I didn't really have anybody to turn to. And so I turned to maladaptive coping mechanisms, and I didn't have I didn't have like anybody to guide me through that part of my life when I was young. And a lot of that stuff I think will lend itself to somebody being, I guess, predisposed to some external force to fix that, you know? And the thing that happens, it could be anything. It could be literally like some of my stuff is like just silly childhood stuff that happened in school. I still like get flashbacks to like stuff that happened when I was a kid, that I just didn't really know how to deal with. And so this idea that there is a like genetic predisposition, m- maybe, but really I just think that if you're genetically predisposed to addiction, right? Meaning like your parents were addicts and you're addicts and you're now an addict, there's a good chance that while your parents were in active addiction, or some behavior of your parents kind of like transferred to you. That's my
Yeah.
personal belief, Um, and so that's why addicts with addict parents will say like it's in my genetics, it's in my genes. I'm genetically predisposed, but I just think that's more of a form of like, well, especially if your parents were in active addiction when you were a kid, that's going to leave a massive imprint on you, and they're doing the best that they could with what they have, and what they have is also addiction. So there's a good chance that they're affecting you and not realizing that they're affecting you, and now you have no way to cope with that.
Yeah.
So
And then I guess you're constantly chasing the high of taking the substance because that makes you feel, say, up here. And when you
right.
stop taking it, you're back down here again. So I guess you're constantly
And it's a
chasing that
crutch.
feel good. Yeah.
You get further away from what would ordinarily be a healthy way to cope with X, Y, or Z. You're
Yeah.
now you're just like so far away from that. And then you add the physical dependence on top of it. And that's when it becomes a job, a full-time job. And when it becomes a full-time job, and the effects of not making it to work that day are that you are sicker than you've ever felt in your entire life, you will do pretty much whatever you have to do to feed the addiction and get the next hit. And
Yeah.
I mean anything.
Like I've got on I've never personally suffered with addiction, but I know people who have been on things like antidepressants and stuff like that, not being able to cope with the sort of general ups and downs of life. And it was originally a funny thing that I've got on my desk. It's the lyrics. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ronan Keaton, the singer.
No,
He
I
sings a
don't think
song
so.
called "Life Is a Roller Coaster," and
Mhm.
basically it is a photo right next to my desk, and it's got all the lyrics. And that is basically it's one of the things that if I ever speak to someone that's struggling with maybe a little bit of depression and things like that, and one of the lyrics is "Life's a roller coaster, you've just got to ride it," which
Mhm.
essentially is quite a good analogy for the ups and downs of life, I find. And
Yeah.
that sort of, in a way, keeps me a little bit grounded. To say if I'm having a bad day, I just have a quick glance because this is my work desk as well. So I have a quick glance at that and realize that, yeah, sometimes life isn't going to be great every day, but you've just got to keep riding the roller coaster essentially.
Yeah, I love that, and I love those little reminders and stuff, and the simple little mantras like that, they help me still today, and especially early on when I got clean. Just those little reminders that, like I said earlier, like sometimes it could be the worst day ever, and the best thing that I did that day, the only good thing that I did that day is that I didn't use, and
Yeah.
That's good enough for me.
It's a little kick of dopamine, isn't it? Ticking that main target of every day off.
That is the first on my to-do list. That has to happen every day. That's the first and last thing. I have to go to sleep with, knowing I made it through another day, and it really, again, back to the one day at a time thing. It is just that simple.
I love it. So, what was the point where you realized that you had to stop this? Like, what was the low point? Was there a lowest point where you sort of, this is the point where I need to sort of change and start progressing away from substances?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, addiction's a funny thing because it starts out, heroin feels amazing. This is I'm not trying to like glorify
Yeah.
in any way or romanticize it, but that's the thing is it feels so good and you're using it at a certain point just to not feel sick, right? But it starts out really fun and exciting. And toward the end of my addiction, maybe not even the end of my addiction, in the middle of my addiction, what started out as like fun and exciting, and you get that giddy feeling when you knew you were gonna pick up and you were gonna get high again, or just stop feeling sick. It it became me crying on my way to my dealer's house, because I couldn't stop. I wanted everything in my body and my spirit, my soul wanted to stop doing this, and I couldn't stop. There was nothing I could really do about it. I was in the grips of addiction, and it's hard to describe what that actually feels like because to a sane person, it's like, okay, your life is completely unmanageable. You're destroying your life and the lives of those around you, but you can't stop. You cannot stop. You need to be stopped, right? Or you need to have a white light experience or some sort of intervention from something beyond yourself, And for me, it comes in the form of little signs from God for me, And I didn't always have a higher power in my life. Um, I knew there was always something there, but I get signs. And clarity, right? So that's the biggest thing is you have like a moment of clarity. I had a moment of clarity, um, where someone that's really close to me, um, I used to use with, right? And would party with a lot. And we're the same age and he's part of my family. And when he came to visit for Christmas one year, he had like presents for the kids, right? He's my age, had presents for the kids, had just bought a house, had a good job, had a girlfriend, like a dog, like had everything, right? And he was a productive member of society. And then there was me at the same Christmas party blowing lines of dope in the bathroom on the counter cuz I couldn't just go to Christmas, with I couldn't spend any time with my family not high, and it had nothing to do with my family. I couldn't spend any moments doing anything with anybody not high. I had to get high. It was my job. And I remember driving back to a second Christmas party that I knew he was going to be at. And I was driving with my mom and I just broke down in tears and said, I'm using again. And, I didn't ask for help quite yet. I still thought I could get off and stop myself. I didn't fully surrender yet, but the moment of clarity was there. And it was the juxtaposition of this person that I love, but was able to party and he was a normal person, right?
Yeah.
And then there's me. What's the difference? And it hit me like a bolt of lightning. The difference is that I'm an addict. I can't use. He might not be an addict. He can party and do drugs and drink and it doesn't affect his life. But for me, it destroys my life. I burn everything to the ground. And the difference is because I'm an addict. And when I made that admission to myself, that was the start of everything. That was my first step um, in recovery.
So it's almost the acknowledgement that you were an addict, whereas previously you just thought, this is what I do. Like you said, this is my job to get high on sort of a daily basis. You can't do any sort of social events without taking substances. It was that moment of acknowledgement that you were an addict and that you couldn't necessarily function without it at the time.
Yeah, they say like the first, step to changing a problem is admitting that you have a problem. I mean that's it. It's like that's it. It doesn't get any simpler than that. I I needed the juxtaposition I needed to compare myself to somebody, because when you're in active addiction, like you don't think you have a problem. Like you know you have a problem, but you're like, I'm only harming myself. Like everybody just leave me alone. It's such a self-centered disease. Like you don't it's such a sick, twisted, insidious, self-centered disease. You're hurting everybody, but you cannot see it because you're just so focused on yourself. And I needed that juxtaposition, and there's just something about my family. Oh, like they were so excited to see him. He was visiting, he had presents. And then there was me, and at the time I was 235 pounds. I was pre-diabetic. I had stopped moving my body. I only moved really to get in my car, or at the time my parents' car, to take the car to go down and pick up drugs and to come and drive home, or to run around picking up money from other people so that I can then buy more drugs and then give them drugs, and I get, like whatever scheme I came out with that particular day. It's the only time I moved my body. So when I got to rehab, I was pre-diabetic. I was 235 pounds. I ate like shit. I treated my body like a dumpster, really. Um, and I was a sick, disgusting person. And then there was this guy, and just seeing that and how happy everybody was to see him and how indifferent everybody was to see me. And I don't blame them. It just like woke me up, and I had that moment of clarity. Thank God I had that moment of clarity where I was able to see it. Because if I didn't make that admission and see that and go, oh, the difference is because I'm different. I'm literally different. I'm an addict. Oh, okay. I get it now. I'm actually different. Now I can go and seek a solution, right? Which later came in the form of fully surrendering and saying, I need help. I need to go to rehab again.
So at what age was this then that you had the initial realization?
That was like, that was in I was 24, I think.
24.
Yeah, I was 24.
So
I
talk me
was
through the
24.
process then of then when
Yeah,
you actually
so
seeked help and in what
yeah,
form?
so what had happened was I made that admission. I told my parents, "Hey, I'm gonna, get off drugs." I was going to meetings. I had a sponsor and all this stuff. I promised my sponsor and the people in my network that I on January 1st, if I wasn't completely clean, I was gonna wean myself off using Suboxone, which is like a detox, low dose opiate kind of opiate blocker medication. I was gonna buy it off the street, and I was gonna like wean myself down. If I wasn't clean by January 1st, I will go to rehab. Because everyone was like, why don't you just go to rehab? And I was like, no, I can do it. And that's another classic addict thing. We're going to do it ourselves. We refuse to ask for help. We know better. We are like, we know everything, right? And it didn't work, right? I tried. I couldn't get off, right? And one day I did a meditation with my sister, right? I was kicking dope. I was sick as a dog on my mom's couch. My sister comes home and she says, I'm going to do this meditation. Do you want to do it with me? And I thought anything to get out of my head and yes, I'll do this guided meditation. She puts this meditation tape on. And the whole time in my head, I heard a voice that I just assumed was like me, right? Saying over and over again, just go to rehab, just go to rehab, just go to rehab. Over and for like 40 minutes. That when the meditation was done, my sister said, so what'd you think? Or how'd you feel? How do you feel? And I just out of my mouth, I burst out, I need to go to rehab. And that was it. That started it, And so we made the necessary phone calls, and I ended up going to a rehab in New Jersey. And the reason I got into that rehab was because I met a girl on a train years before that I didn't know. Like when I was an intern in the city working at a production company in the city, I met some girl on the train that I sat next to. I had no idea that like 6, 8, however long it was, years later, she would be the person that would get me into the rehab that I ended up staying clean from, right? And that ended up being such a powerful experience in and of itself, that she was the person that got me in. She did outreach for this rehab. She got me in the rehab I was supposed to go to, refused me a bed, and my dad and I were already driving there, and this person said, well, I can get you in here. And I went there, and it was the best decision ever. I mean, I was ready. It was an amazing facility. The staff was amazing. I'm still connected with a lot of those people. The people that are staff there now were patients with me when I was there. I mean, I, and I look back on those moments and I'm like, I know there's a God. I know there's a higher power, because how does that happen? You know,
Crazy how life works, isn't it?
these little signs and synchronicities, it's unbelievable, you know, and I love looking at life that way. You know, I look back at my life and I'm like, that never would, I thought this was a failure. I thought that was my low point. And I didn't realize that if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have done this, which then I met this person, which then I did this, which turned into that. And now I'm here. And I love looking at life like that. It's like a mosaic photograph, or a mosaic, yeah, like a mosaic photograph. It's, you see the picture, right? And the big picture is what your life looks like right now, but it's made up of 10,000 tiny pictures of the little moments that had to happen in the exact way that they happen for your life to look exactly the way it does right now. So my addiction for me is the best thing that ever happened to me. If I was not an addict that got clean and found recovery, I would probably be working a job that I hate. I'd probably be friends with people that I don't really relate to or care for, doing, I don't even know what I'd be doing with my life, like at all. And because of recovery, I've been forced to look at myself to get to the root cause of all my stuff, right? From why did I use, to why do I act self-centeredly? Why do I do this? Why do I do that? I get to the root cause of all that sort of stuff. And having that sort of introspection and magnifying glass on myself is what allows me to grow, you know. And it's a never ending process. Recovery is not something that like you do the 12 steps or you get through rehab and then like you're good. Like, no, because then, you know, if I didn't have a program, if I didn't have people in my life and a sponsor, you know, and now tools outside of recovery as well that are all part of my recovery, I would never grow. I wouldn't have the life that I have. I'd just be a dry drunk, or clean and crazy, you know? Like if you're not actively working on the why you use, because the drugs are just a symptom. Drugs are not the problem. Drugs were never the problem. Drugs were my solution. It was the thing that fixed all of my problems, and it was the greatest solution until it stopped working, you know. And today my solutions are different. My problems, I still have plenty of problems. You know, life is not perfect despite what it might look like on Instagram. Like, and I struggle. I'm extremely human. I'm on the phone almost every day with either a really close friend that I trust or my best friends that are in recovery. You know, I should probably call my sponsor. Maybe after this podcast, I should call my sponsor, you know, and check in with him. But I am constantly surrounded by men and women that have my back, that help talk me off a ledge, that help restore me to sanity every day, because I have the same brain. The only difference is that I'm not using, and I'm trying to fill it with other stuff and learn and adapt and grow. And it's a daily reprieve. That's why it's one day at a time.
Yeah, you've almost got control of it now, haven't you? I guess you've got your support networks that, like you said, you can speak to on a daily basis
I
if you
would
need to.
I would say that I never have I have control of it in the sense that my addiction is in remission, and because I'm clean now, I have a choice. I didn't have a choice while I was using. When you're using, you don't have a choice. That you forfeited your choice to not use. Once you use that first time, if you're an addict, you are off to the races, and God knows if you'll ever get clean. God knows if you'll live that long, honestly. Um, but I have a choice today, right? And so in that way, I do have control, and that brings me back to my first step, right? And is admitting that I have a problem, right? So that within that admission is I'm not in control, but I have control of my actions today. And it is a choice if I put that first one in. Because what happens after that first one, I have no idea what happens. I don't know, I don't know what's going to happen if I were to pick up a drink or a drug. But I do have a choice today to not pick up that first drink or drug. And so in that way, I do have control, but you never beat this thing. That's the thing with addiction. It's so hard to describe because it's not something that can be beaten. It is literally for the rest of my life, this will be a thing that I struggle with, but it doesn't have to be a struggle too. I don't want it to sound like that because my life is absolutely incredible and it's beautiful. And I want people that are listening that are either struggling with addiction right now or struggling in their recovery that it is better to be in recovery wondering what it's like to have that beer or have that drink than it is to be stuck in active addiction again, having tested the waters, wishing that you were in recovery again.
Yep.
So I want people that are maybe listening to this to not think that recovery is like a struggle. In the beginning it's a struggle, but it's not like this white knuckling thing, that I think people think it is, where it's like, oh, I can never have a beer again, I can't do this again. It's not like that. It's incredible. It's you learn to live and enjoy life as others do without having to put anything in your body to have fun.
I guess you've got that perspective now as well, haven't you? You've seen the road it takes you down through substance use, but now you've also got the view of what life's like without substance. And like you said, life can be great without taking anything. And also, I guess you don't have to worry about hangovers either.
No, it's funny. I can't even if I stay up too late, I feel hungover the next day. So
I know the feeling.
I can't even imagine what it would be like to have an actual hangover, And I'm getting older. I'm not, 21, 22, 23 anymore where you can just drink all night and then you wake up and you're like, you have a slice of pizza and then you're fine. Like I don't even know how my body would react.
Yeah, but it's not worth finding out, is it? So just going back to your recovery then through the rehab, explain what the process was with that. Like, was it plain sailing? Did you have any issues along the way? And how long was the process throughout the rehab?
So the rehab process itself was a month, it's 30 days in a inpatient facility. I was administered the detox medication, which is like a low dose opiate, so that you kind of wean off opiates, and they taper you down so that you're not, in thrown into acute withdrawal. And then, in rehab, for anybody that's like curious what rehab is like, it was like the rehab that I went to the second time was, like I said, I can't say enough about it. It's, uh, I think it's called Pinelands Recovery now, and they were just unbelievable. They're in New Jersey. They have a facility in California, but it's really not the rehab itself. That one was special, and the people there and the time that I was there was just a special place. It was exactly what I needed. But you go into rehab and it's like you have groups, right? So you're in a group setting. For me, the reason I knew I needed to go to rehab was because I needed to be around other people that were struggling with the same thing I was struggling with. I could not do it alone, right? uh, I needed the power of the group. I needed like a group dynamic. I needed to be around people that could relate to me, right? That understood me. And that was really powerful, And so for 30 days, I was in rehab, and you went to groups, and you did literature studies, and we had activities and all sorts of things. We were able to get outside. It was the winter in New Jersey, so it was super cold, but we were able to. There were basketball courts if it was a sunny day and it wasn't terribly cold out. We would go outside and shoot hoops. They would take us off site to a gym, which was nice because I was starting to realize I destroyed my body. I would like to get in shape. They had clean eating options too at this particular facility, which was incredible. And I remember the cook, I'll never forget this. The cook, his name was Victor. He was unbelievable. I'll never forget him. He said, I think you're going to get this. Like, I know you're taking this seriously. And I said, how do you know that? He said, I could tell who's taking their recovery seriously and taking rehab seriously by how the people eat when they get to rehab. Because you get a lot of people that just need to get off the streets for a while. It's cold, it's winter. They get their skin and bones. They weigh, 80 pounds soaking wet, and they just need to get fed real quick, and they eat whatever the hell they can eat. They put, they recharge, and then they go back out and they use again, and they get ready for another drug run. But I didn't. I took it seriously. And when I got out of rehab, I took suggestions. I was open-minded. I listened to what my counselor suggested of me, and they said, why don't you go to like a halfway house, when you're released? And at first I said, no way. And they said, all right, we'll give it a couple days. Think about it. Right. And it was the same thing with rehab. I said, I'm only here for 2 weeks. And as soon as I detox, I'm out. And they said, well, why don't you just wait, and see how you feel in a couple days. And my heart began to soften while I was in rehab. And I realized I really want this. And if I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it this time, I need to be open-minded. I need to stop doing so much of this and do some more listening and be open-minded to what people who know what they're talking about. I have to trust. I have to turn my will over to something greater than myself. And at the time, it was the group. It was people that had more time than me. It was my counselors. It was people in recovery that worked there that were saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you try this? And eventually I took all their suggestions. I stayed until my insurance kicked me off, right? When I got out, I went to a halfway house. And when I got to that halfway house, it was in my hometown, which was really weird. Um, so I went to meetings in my area that I used in and grew up in.
Just
And
explain, sorry, what's a halfway house for those that may not know?
So sure, yeah, this is a good point. So a halfway house is like a house that you go to that's like when you get out of like an institution, whether it's rehab or jail or prison or something like that. And it's like a halfway house, right, between
Between going back into society, I guess.
the institution that you are in, right, and being institutionalized uh and having totally free will. So now I went to what's called an Oxford house. And an Oxford house, it's not, I guess, like a strictly traditional halfway house where like a halfway house might have like people who run it, right, who work there, right, where there's like maybe a staff. Where I lived, it was called an Oxford house, and it was essentially a house that was self-governed by the people who lived there, and they're all in recovery. And we would have meetings once a week. Everybody had a job, like a service position, and that's how I learned like responsibility and stuff like that. Like I was the you have like the president, you have the comptroller, you have like the person in charge of the finances that pays all the bills. We all had specific chores. We had a specific chore day. We had rules in the house. You were randomly drug tested if somebody thought that you were potentially using. You were expected to go to meetings. It was a recovery house, and now it being self-governed is scary because it really depends on the people that are in the house. If you are not doing the right thing, a recovery house can quickly turn into a crack den very quickly.
I guess you've all got to keep each other accountable, haven't you?
100%. And so if it looks like somebody's using, right, and if it's a good house, people are on the lookout, and you get pop, piss test, you pop drug test. And we had to do that. We had to kick some people out of the house that we were living in because they relapsed and they used. And so the halfway house or the Oxford house that I lived in, I think there was 8 or 9 of us. The people on the top floor, the newest guys had to share rooms, right? There was like, I don't even know how the math works out. There was like 5 bedrooms or something like that. And there was like 8 or 9 of us or something. So 2 people had to share rooms, or 4 people had to share bedrooms, right? So when I first got there, I shared a room with a guy from the Ukraine. He didn't really speak much English, a lot of broken English, and there was just a dresser that divided our beds, and that was it. That's how I lived until enough people moved out, when you'd move up in the pecking order until you got your own
Yeah.
room, you know? And at that time, I was going to meetings every day, right? I got heavily involved in 12-step fellowship and going to meetings every day. I started going to the gym and taking my health seriously again. I got a job delivering pizzas at a pizzeria that, I used to go to as a kid, growing up in this town, which was extremely humbling. There were times where I had to deliver pizza to homes of friends of mine, and they would answer the door, or their parents would answer the door, and they'd go, "Justin, what the hell are you doing here?" And I grew up in a nice town. Almost everybody like went to college and got nice jobs and had families, and I'm, at this point, by the time I finally quit and got a different job, I was 27 years old delivering pizza, you know, and it was a humbling experience. It was tough. I'm not gonna lie.
I can imagine. And then I think you moved to, was it UPS after delivering pizzas?
Yeah, yeah. So I had a
Yeah.
number of odd jobs, and I'm grateful for my time as a pizza delivery driver. I learned a lot, and really some of the happiest moments of my entire life took place like in that first 18 months, 2 years of recovery where I was delivering pizza. My life was very simple. Early recovery was challenging because I was learning how to live life again, literally from scratch. I mean, I didn't know how to do anything. When I got clean, I realized it's not that, so many people when they're using, I hear like, oh, I don't even want to live anymore. Like I wanted to die. I never wanted to die when I was using. I just didn't know how to live. Like I couldn't,
Yeah.
I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to be an adult. I like suffer from Peter Pan syndrome, a Peter Pan complex. I never want to grow up, and I kind of ran from that until it was time to grow up. And then at that point, you're a young adult and the world feels big and scary, and I don't know how to do it. And so I had to learn at 24, 25, 26, 27. Like I grew up late, I guess, in that way, because you stop developing emotionally when you first start using drugs. When you first start using drugs and you start using something outside of yourself to cope, you emotionally stop growing, right? So I started being put on something when I was like 12 years old, right? And then I started dabbling and using harder drugs throughout high school and then into college. Like I stopped developing young, and so I had to learn life then, right? So I had a number of different odd jobs, and eventually I get a job at UPS. And the reason I got that job at UPS was because I knew I wanted to get back into film production, right? Maybe photography was becoming an interest of mine. I went to film school, and I always wanted to be a film director. That was like my dream, and work in movies and telling stories. And um, so my sponsor had hooked me up with somebody that was hiring, and they had a small production company. They did a lot of corporate gigs and a lot of, at the time, it was mostly corporate gigs, um, and some documentary stuff. And I had an interview, and then I never heard from them again, right? But I knew I didn't get the job because I saw the posting. I saw a new posting from that employer pop up, so I knew I didn't get the job, or that posting would never have been reposted. And then one day, I'm on the phone with my father, and I think at that point, like, he was helping me out with, like, my phone bill or something. He was helping me out, um, in early recovery until I got, my feet back under me. And he was telling me how, uh, like, he was gonna stop paying the phone bill, and it was like the perfect storm. So he's telling me this, I'm on the phone with him, and we were arguing about that and some other things. And I'm like, "Dad, hang on one second. I've got to bring this delivery in." And I deliver this pizza to this guy. The guy who opens the door is the guy who interviewed me for the production company job that I didn't get. And he just looked at me, a look that I've gotten many times as a pizza delivery man, and where he felt bad for me, and I think maybe felt a little funny because I interviewed for him not that long ago, and he said, "So, how you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm here, so great." And I was so humiliated and so embarrassed by that interaction that I got back in the car. My dad's on the phone, and I said, "You know what? I'm just going to apply to UPS, Dad. That's what I'm going to do." Because they were hiring. I knew friends that worked for them. It was a super secure job, extremely stable, financially stable. I had never experienced true financial stability in my life. And in that moment, I was so humiliated, and I knew I needed to make some serious adjustments and start really saving money and making real money if I ever want to have a family or any of this stuff. Um, and that's what I did. I applied to UPS and I worked at UPS for the next 20, 21 months.
So, at what point did you get back into the photography then? How did that happen?
Yeah, I got back into it because I felt this like itch to create, and I had this old camera in my closet that I bought after film school, that I wanted to make films with. I made one film, I made one music video with it, and then I never did anything with it again because my addiction had, was
Yeah.
taking over my life. Um, but I love the outdoors, I love nature, and I I was inspired by the stuff I saw online, honestly, like of these epic mountains and hikes and just natural beauty. And I thought, I'm gonna pick up my camera. I'm gonna start taking it with me on hikes. And so I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do, and I loved it. And so all the while I was working for UPS, I was honing my photography skills, but at the time I had shifted away from like video and it was still photography. So I was learning how to tell a story and make elicit an emotional response from a single frame rather than from 24 frames in a second, in a video or a film. And so while I was working at UPS, I was honing those skills and going on trips and um taking my camera with me and learning still photography.
So, what was the point where you quit and went all in on the photography? And was there maybe a certain moment, a certain photo that you thought,
Oh,
yeah,
100%.
this is what I've
Yeah,
got to do?
there's this is a big part of my story and my journey. When I was a UPS driver, I would listen to certain podcasts, right? And I would listen to certain things on the internet, a lot of like Tony Robbins kind of stuff, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
motivational, like because it was the only thing that kept me literally sane because I was so unhappy in my life that I needed somebody to pretty much tell me that I had the power of changing my life if I was really unhappy. And so I was building this portfolio and listening to all this stuff. And one podcast that I heard that changed my whole life. Chase Jarvis was on the Rich Roll podcast, and I happened to pick that episode. And Chase Jarvis, at one point, he said that the number one regret of people on their deathbeds is that they didn't live a life that was authentic to them. They lived a life that they thought everybody else wanted them to live.
Yeah.
That's the number one regret of people on their deathbed. It wasn't public speaking. It wasn't even the fear of death itself. It was that I didn't fully live my life. And I saw these people online that were traveling, that were making money doing photography, that were living this beautiful, adventurous life. And I thought, that's what I really want. That is what I want. It's not this. I'm so unhappy here. I'm so unbelievably unhappy. And I did not get clean and get a second chance at life to be unhappy, you know, uh, 50, 60 hours a week for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I took my first paid vacation with my ex-girlfriend. We went to California. We rented a camper van. It was an old 83 Volkswagen Westfalia. And we took it to Yosemite National Park. And then we took it to Big Sur. And I shot photographs. And I literally, for for 10 days. I lived my dream. It was my first paid vacation. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. And we went out and we did it. We had the best time. And like, we lived this whimsical existence where we were traveling and meeting people and taking photographs and seeing this raw beauty of the West. I'd never been out West before. So not only was I seeing these places for the first time and making photographs of them for the first time, but I mean, I was experiencing the West for the first time, not just
Yeah.
mountains, like the West, real mountains, real raw beauty, the most beautiful places in our country. And I remember one night my girlfriend was asleep in the van, and I said, I'm gonna lay out on this picnic table under the stars and listen to the ocean. And it was dark out, and I'm watching the stars, and I had this moment where I felt in my soul and my gut, and I said to myself, I can't go back to UPS. There's just no way. Like there is just no way I could possibly go back to UPS. I have gotten a taste of what I want my life to be like, and this feels so real and so aligned. And so I went back to UPS, and within 1 month, I put my 2 weeks in, and I said, I'm going to live a life that I want to live. And I'm tired of watching other people online living my dream while I sit on the sidelines and say, oh, I wish I could do that. Or even worse, which I'm guilty of, making excuses as to why they could do it and I couldn't. And I come to
Yeah.
find out that the only reason why I couldn't was because I kept telling myself I couldn't. And so all the podcasts and all the Les Browns and the Tony Robbins and all the motivational stuff that I had listened to while I was working UPS was starting to get embedded into my being, in my psyche, that it is possible. It's possible. It's not this far away thing. It's going to be a long process, but it's possible if I start now. And the first step was to quit UPS. I needed to make more time for my photography and take a risk, and I was like almost 2 years in another year and a half, 2 years, I would have hit top rate and I'd be in golden handcuffs. Right. And I would never quit at that point. Cause at that point I'm getting paid really well. And, I knew I needed to just take a leap of faith and just trust that my higher power did not bring me this far just to bring me this far, that there had to be something more and better out there. And there's something there. And that's kind of how life works. It's not like this, like, you have to do this. I'm always asking people, what should I do? What should I do? It's not, for me, it was always like this little whisper, right? Like when I was in Big Sur, it was just, you can't go back to UPS. It was just that simple, right? And so the next
Yeah.
step was on me. And then it's little breadcrumbs throughout life. It's like, go check behind that bush. See what's like over there. That bush looks interesting. And then you go there and there's like this little like arrow that says like, go check behind that tree. And then like you go to the tree and there's like a note that says like, go over there. And you start kind of like taking this path, and it is like the roller coaster that you talked about. It has not been straight and easy. There have been so many times where I mean, recently where I'm like, I'm a failure and maybe it's time to pack it up. Like I've had a really good few years living on the road. I lived my dream for 2 years, 3 years, at the point that I had these thoughts. It might just be time to get a real job, man. And I'm so grateful that I didn't quit before the miracle happened, because I'm starting to see the fruits of a decade's worth of labor come to fruition now. And I live an absolutely epic, you know, story, and it's epic because of all the twists and turns. Like my day to day right now is not that special, but it's so full. It's so beautiful, wake up, go surfing, go to yoga, go climbing, go shooting, go running, go biking, go to meetings, spend time with friends, family. My life is so full today. And, it's because of the journey that it took to get here, and if any of it had been handed to me, then I wouldn't appreciate it as much as I do. They say easy come, easy go, you know? And so I'm real grateful that almost none of this has been easy. because I wouldn't cherish it as much as I do.
It's like you were saying before, isn't it? Like all of these little moments that you've had through life, you've been like in almost the right place at the right time with some of them. Like you had your sister with the meditation that got you into rehab. You had that moment where you bumped into the guy from the camera, the photography business, when you were a pizza delivery guy, which pushed you out of there into UPS. Then you
Mhm.
picked up your camera and you are essentially, well, years along the line where you are today. And it's almost like if those things, like were almost destined to have these moments throughout life to get you to where you are today.
Mhm. I mean, that's just how, and even hearing you repeat that, all the different things that had to go right really just reaffirms my faith, that it it will work out. Like I'm always like trying to fix, manage, and control everything to work out, right? And if it doesn't go like this, then it's not going to work out, and I'm going to fail, and I'm going to end up a single old man in a dusty apartment with a pet lizard or something like that. It's like where my head goes, that I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
it's all gonna fall apart. And even just hearing you say all those things, it's wild. It's like there's no way I could have all the things you just mentioned were things that were out of my control. Every single thing that you mentioned, including the girl that I met on a train that years later got me into the rehab that I went to, right? That now that rehab has photographs that I've made that hang on their walls because they've purchased my photographs. They purchase a calendar for the last 3 years that I make, right? That hangs in the counselor's offices. I could never have predicted that all that look at all that happened because I met some girl on a train years ago. Like all the stuff that you mentioned, I had no control over, which means that there is something looking out for me, right? And I think the way I see it is looking out for all of us, and so that's like deeply, like I could just breathe a sigh of relief, like, oh, thank God I don't need to control the world. Being the master of the universe is so tiring anyway. Let me take, like a break and let someone else take the wheel. And that's the thing. I'm not in control. I'm not in control of any of this. And that's the best part of it, And so
We
when
can just
things
control our reactions to it, can't we?
that's it. And in my first step, that's actually what I learned. Is like literally the only thing I have control over. My sponsor asked me to write 5 things I have control over and 5 things that I have no control over. And pretty much what they all boil down to, the things that I actually have control over are my actions. Actions and reactions. That's it. I can't even control my own thoughts. It's just how I react to them, you know?
So, with obviously the recovery and rehab, have you used any of those tools over into the photography side of things with the maybe the fear of uncertainty of quitting a stable income and going for it full time photography? Has there been any sort of crossover that you've noticed that has helped you progress through
My
the
my
photography?
entire life is directly based on my recovery. My recovery and the principles that I've learned in recovery, I carry out, or I try to the best of my ability to carry those principles out into my day-to-day life. It's one thing to sit in a group, to sit in a 12-step meeting and spew a bunch of stuff or sit on a podcast about how great I am and how spiritual I am and then go and cut someone off and then give them the finger, in traffic.
Yeah.
Am I carrying this into all areas of my life? And I'm so human that like I mentioned before, that I don't, not in every single area, but I try to the best of my ability to carry it into all areas of my life. So when it comes to, you know, taking the leaps of faith that I've taken in my life, it really was like just just go for it. Just trust fall with the universe, trust fall with God, whatever you believe in. And as long as your heart is in the right place, it almost always works out. Even when it doesn't seem like it's working out at first, it always works out.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, we just said the only person that can decide how they react to it is us. It's out of our control. So there's it's almost pointless to worry and stress about things that may or may not happen. We've just got to be able to deal with the way we react to them after they happen.
Right, which I struggle with all the time. Like I said, I'm so very
So does everyone,
human.
though.
You
Yeah.
know, I just I get wrapped up in it, you know, on a daily, and that's why I make a phone call when I'm getting yesterday, I was stressed out about this video that I've got, 3 videos that I have to shoot for work, and I got to the location that I was gonna shoot them, and I thought, "There's no way I can do this here," and I had, like, a mini freak out, and I had to call 3 people to talk me off a ledge because I was about to go, "You know what? I'm just gonna quit this gig. I can't do it. I don't have what it takes. I can't do it." You know, and I needed someone to help me in that moment and walk me off a ledge, and that's a silly example, but that's the I deal with that on a daily, you know?
Yeah, I think as well though that is a good thing to realize is that we are all human and we all have these things. We're not individuals in that sense. I think that we all have problems that we've got to work around and we've got to use those coping mechanisms. Like you said, you made a couple of phone calls and you got the job done in the end. It's about finding those support networks and those things that can get you past an issue and stop leaning on them and being open and able to admit that you may be struggling with something, no matter how big or small it could be, is that
100%.
there are ways to get around them. And it's just having that almost humility in a way to say, I can't do this on my own, or I'm struggling a little bit. And
That's
yeah,
yeah.
it's leaning on those
Yeah,
support networks.
sometimes that's so hard because, you know, our egos really get in the way, you know, and think that we can do it on our own, and if there's, you know, one thing that I've learned probably bigger than anything is that none of this I did on my own. I have been guided by a higher power and by my family and by my friends the whole way, that anytime I needed help or had questions or was uncertain, you know, the right people and sometimes the wrong people, you know, I've gotten a lot of bad advice too, and there's been a lot of people that are rooting and still are probably rooting against me, you know,
Yeah.
and but I have had just an amazing support network, and I've recognized early on I can't do this on my own, so I lean on my network all the time, daily, whenever I need help. You know, I'm not afraid to say I need help. You know, my ego gets in the way a lot of times, but like when it comes down to it, when the pain is great enough, I will ask for help.
Yeah. And that's the main thing. And also well done for doing so and getting to the point where you are.
I was gonna say yourself as well. I'm sure that there you have tons of examples of that. You know, you built up this really cool podcast and you know this life for yourself, and you know you also are guiding people as well. So I'm sure you have tons of experience in that as well.
But I've also been guided myself as well. So I'm
Yeah,
not alone in that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We each one teach one. We're all just like, you know, really
Exactly. We take all these small
teaching
snippets from our lives, don't we? And it builds us up to where we've become. Like you said, it's like a mosaic of these 10,000 situations that have happened that have built us to where we are today.
100%.
Now, I know you are a little bit short on time, so we're going to finish with a couple of sort of quicker fire questions that I've got to ask.
Okay, okay, cool.
Okay. So, have you had any people reach out about your story that's inspired them and sort of being the voice for recovery through your art? How have you found that? Have you had anyone reach out
Um, has anybody reached out and said what? I'm so
in terms
sorry.
of your stories inspired them to then get on a path of maybe recovery and through your art,
100%.
maybe?
I have, and it's the best messages I ever get are from people that are either struggling or were struggling that see what my life turned into, and they've used it as hope and inspiration that has helped them. That is the most fulfilling DM that I get ever, you know, and always, you know, and I'm always super humbled and extremely blessed every single time I get a message like that. And I get messages like that fairly often, and it never gets old, and I don't think it ever will get old. It's the best message I could ever get.
I can imagine. What is next for you in terms of projects or goals on the horizon?
Oh, that's interesting. So I no longer live full time in my van, at least not right now. And so I'm kind of in this weird, you know, position where I haven't been like in a stable, just regular kind of life in years, you know? It literally it's been 4 years since I've had an address, and could go to the same gym or the same coffee shop or the same yoga studio or, you know, see the same people, you know, every day. And so I'm just right now, I'm just learning some of that. I'm relearning some of that again, and it's just been unbelievable. And I'm so happy here. I'm in San Diego County, and I am just absolutely loving my life here right now and loving this slow period to get back to really focusing on like simple things and my health, because 4 years on the road, whether people want to admit it or not, it does a number on your health. At least it did for me, and I am 100% refocused on really healthy habits and routines and my mental, physical, and spiritual health.
Love it. So like an almost stability period of your life.
Right now is a stability period. I don't really know what's next. I'm going to continue to, you know, travel and shoot. I've got a trip to Nicaragua that's coming up. I've never been to Central America. I'm really excited to see what that's about. That'll be a blend of yoga and surf, which I'm learning to surf right now, and photography and
Cool.
beauty and beaches and natural, you know, landscapes. And I'm excited about that. And I'll probably go back down to Baja this winter. And I really hope to work with, you know, maybe the tourism board for Baja California Sur again. And I think there's going to be I think 2026 is going to be a really fun, exciting year professionally. I think there's going to be some amazing projects that I don't even, you know, they haven't even come to fruition yet, that I'm sure, you know, at the end of the year, I'll be like, I can't believe that, you know, I worked on that or I did that. I think it's going to be a really fun, exciting year. And I'm just really excited about what's next.
I'm looking forward to seeing the journey as well.
Yeah,
So
I think it'll be a really special, exciting year.
so going on from that then, what's the favorite place that you've photographed so far?
Yeah, so I think, you know, for me, it probably always goes back to Yosemite. Yosemite National Park is just, it's a special place to not only photograph, but to be in. There's an energy there that's just undeniable for me. There's so much history within those walls, and just so much has happened. The last time I was there, I got to meet Alex Honnold and Tommy Caldwell, who are two legendary rock climbers, both just absolute legends, big wall legends, El Capitan legends. One of them, you know, Alex Honnold climbed it without any ropes in
Yeah,
2017,
the free
and
solo.
free solo. And I bumped into him and Tommy in front of El Cap this last time I
That's really
was
cool.
there a couple weeks ago, which was really just so special. And they were so nice and so cool. And I'm just, man, that place is just that place just has my heart.
It's definitely on the bucket list for me. So just going kind of back to it then. So if you could tell the Justin in the halfway house, or I guess even at the start of rehab, in one sentence, what would you tell them?
I think I would say don't quit before the miracle happens. I think that that sums up pretty much all of it, because if you believe in that statement, then you believe in miracles, and you have to have faith that all this stuff you're going through right now, Justin, I know you can't see where it's going or what it's going to lead to. And I know you are literally just putting one foot in front of the other, and you don't know your ass from your elbow right now. But one day it's all going to make sense. And one day you'll look back and be so glad that you didn't give up and you kept just moving forward toward what really spoke to the most authentic version of you.
Love it. I've got a quote that I actually wrote down, which links in quite well with that. Is that it's from JP Morgan. So the first step toward getting somewhere is to decide that you're not going to stay where you are. I think that
Mm.
links in very well to your story. And probably, I guess, the very start of the story that we spoke about, where you were in the car and you had that moment of realization. And that's just snowballed into where we are today.
there's been, that's an amazing quote, and, it reminds me of, I think it's like complacency is like the enemy of progress or something like that, or, uh, complacency or comfort is like the most traveled road to an ordinary life, and I never wanted an ordinary. I'm butchering that quote, so somebody, I think Will Smith said it. Somebody please correct me, but um, there were so many moments where I could have said this is good enough, and for just being clean and having a job at UPS really was good enough. It was good enough, but you really only live once, and it's like, let's see, and like I said, I was tired of looking at other people living my dreams, and then I heard that Chase Jarvis quote, and I said, I'm not gonna risk it. I think the worst thing that could ever happen in life is to be on your deathbed and look back and think, you know what, it's all over now, so none of it really matters anyway. And I could have done anything I wanted with this one life, and it doesn't matter because it's about to end. And I should have asked that girl out. I should have taken that job. I should have quit that job. I should have taken that risk. I should have tried that hobby, you know? And I think that that would be the most painful thing in the world, is to be on your deathbed and be like, I didn't live my life. I lived someone else's life, and now it's all over.
There's a reason why they say the graveyard's the wealthiest place on the earth, which is all
Yeah.
the dreams that never
The
happened, the
dreams.
businesses that never started.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly
it's
right.
why I always say that life's too short not to be doing the things that make us happy.
100%. Yeah, I fully agree with that.
So, one final one then, Justin. Where
Mm.
can everyone find your work and help
Sure.
support you?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at @just_passing through. There's no G in passing through. It's just_PASSINTHROUGH. I think I spelled that right, but I'm
You
sure you'll
did.
put like something in the
I'll put the
description.
links in the description. Don't
I
worry.
also I also have a website, justinkrompier.com. I offer my landscape photography prints. You can also get in touch with me via email, through my website. And every year I usually put out like a landscape calendar, and that sort of stuff really helps support me so that I can continue to do this for a living. And when finances are stretched thin, I usually rely on, print sales and calendar sales to kind of carry me through in some of the harder times, which, I've had plenty of those over the last 10 years.
I've got someone that I could put you in touch with, actually. I'll tell you after we've hit pause on the episode. But
Cool.
Justin, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story. I've really enjoyed hearing, obviously, going from the very start all the way through to where we are today. Where, like I said on my Instagram story today, I think you are genuinely a world-class photographer. From some of the stuff I've seen in the short time I've been following you, is really incredible stuff.
Thank you, George, for having me, and I'm incredibly humbled to not only be here, but to hear that, means the world to me.
No problem at all. Guys, if you've enjoyed this one, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and I'll see you in the
Drop a
next one.
like.
Yes.